Thank you so much, everyone. Good evening. I am delighted to be a part of Heckle the Professor Night. I am from Portland, Oregon. So for those of you who are a bit geographically challenged, Portland is on the west coast of the U.S., a bit between San Francisco and Seattle. So just imagine those free love hippies and those tree-hugging granolas, and that pretty much is our student body. I'm a professor at Portland State University, and our motto is, let knowledge serve the city. Let knowledge serve the city. Isn't that nice? Yeah. It's a lot better than give us all your money, endure boring lectures, and graduate into a minimum job. So at Portland State, to let knowledge serve the city, we have over 400 community-based learning courses every year. Our whole idea is that academia shouldn't just be about content, but about context. And the only way to do that is to truly and authentically connect with the community. So I'm actually quite delighted that actually many of you in the audience here are part of the Service Learning Conference. So how many of you are here from the Service Learning Conference? Give yourself a hand. A few. Yes. Wonderful. And I want to give a special shout out to our own Dr. Lorraine McElrath from NUI Galway. She brought us all here. She is truly changing the world. Yes. And letting knowledge serve the world. Right? Because we all have a lot of very difficult issues and challenges that we have to face. So actually, you know, what I was thinking is it's a bit like the Irish Claddagh. Did I get that correct? Right? It's the head and the heart and the hands. Yeah? All of those come together. So it's a very nice metaphor for community engagement. And so Shelley's here. Shelley, what are some of the issues that you deal with? Right? Racial inequality. That's right. And how about you? Yes, racial strife. Okay. Yes. And pollution and water quality. All of these things, right, that we have to all come together to solve. So since I'm here, I just want to call just to your attention a kind of a small Irish social issue, but it has global ramifications, and it's personally a bit distressing to me. So I'm quite concerned about the length of time that it takes for a pint of Guinness to come to a head. I mean, 119.5 seconds? That's a long time. I mean, Lorraine, don't you have some service learning students can get on this? No, but in all seriousness, I'm supposed to talk a bit about what I do at Portland State. Well, as a full professor with tenure, actually not much. I mean, because this is community service. This is going on a line in my vita. Actually, I do a couple of things there. I teach in a graduate and online graduate certificate program for service learning. Essentially, what I do is I work with professionals who want to do this kind of work. So, Fiona, if you have your cell phone and others, if you take those out and please Google Portland State Graduate Certificate in Service Learning, and then hit that little tab that says Enroll. Because my enrollment this term is just a bit low, and I want to make sure I can come to more conferences like this because it's such a wonderful learning opportunity. But the other thing I do actually is I do research, and I have really the privilege of being able to travel to different colleges, not only in the States, but in other parts of the world. And so one of the things that I do when I'm there is I try to focus on how do I get others, especially faculty in all these academic disciplines, to connect themselves with the community, to involve themselves in civic engagement or community engagement. So what I'm going to do tonight, since I'm supposed to share about expertise, is I have a lecture prepared on the 49 most critical elements of effective service learning. Yippee! You get an A from the beginning. But even though you're not sitting in the front row, because yes. So let me start with number one. And the first, you thought I was joking. I have 48 more to go. So number one, I'm going to call this intercultural consideration. Right? We all want intercultural competence, but that's very hard to try to come to. So rather, again, using our heads and our hearts and our actions, we need to be considerate when we're others. Because really, effective engagement is when we find the meaning and create trusting relationships with those around us. And right, especially when we travel internationally, we have many people here that are from other parts of the world. just those introductions can make a big difference. So for instance, when I'm in Japan, right, I don't say, hey, how you doing in the old American way, right? In Japan, you bow slightly and you say, hajimemashite, nice to meet you, right? I do work in India. We tend to fold our hands and say, namaste, which is blessings to all of you, right? So Anya, actually, when I arrived, she gave me a wonderful Irish welcome. She said, oh, come on down, come to the pub, we're going to have some crack, and also some Guinness. Well, I was a bit jet-lagged, but I wanted to be interculturally considerate. So I said, Anya, I'm all for the Guinness, but maybe not the crack tonight, okay? So I was in Turkey, actually, because I mentioned, that I have this wonderful opportunity to travel around the world. And the president there invited me to come because he wanted me to work with their faculty on the strategic plan. How can we do this work? And, especially Turkey's had a number of political and also democratic challenges dealing with the refugees. So I was there, and as a part of my work, I was doing a large faculty workshop. In fact, we had about 300 faculty in the audience that were really interested in hearing about what are people in different parts of the world doing in terms of community-based learning. But the president was running a bit late, so we're kind of waiting patiently, just like you all are, for the punchline. And when the president finally arrived, he went up and he gave me this lovely introduction. I thought it was so nice. But as he was leaving, and as I was coming up to the podium, he said to me, oh, I'm so sorry that I was late. And of course, right, I'm from the Northwest. We have tree huggers, we have hippies, right? It's sort of go with the flow. So I didn't want him to feel uncomfortable at all. So when I came up to the podium and I looked out on all of the faculty, I said, in my best American way, to put him at ease, oh, don't worry, it's okay. It's great. Well, these waves of snickers started going through the audience, and I looked over to see the president. He was like ashen white and almost shaking. Well, I later came to find out that this actually means up yours, asshole. Intercultural considerations. So I was in Puerto Rico. Certainly our hearts go out to them since they've just gone through Hurricane Irma. But I was there because the Department of Education in Puerto Rico wanted to really try to increase their student attendance and graduation rates, and to do that through using service learning. So I was working with about 50 to 60 coaches that were going to go into the schools. And it was actually a 3-day experience, and they were quite enthusiastic. They were doing all kinds of group activities, which, just as an aside, whenever you do consulting and you're getting paid, always have people do lots of group activities, because it takes up a lot of time on the clock. But they were getting really into it. For those of you, who do this, they were talking about Kolb's learning styles and how they could share this in terms of different reflection activities on community engagement. But it was time to call their attention back. So I thought, well, let's all come back. Let's pay attention. Nope, that wasn't getting them. So I thought, well, I'm going to teach them an American little trick that I use when I go into schools, which is quiet coyote. Have you heard this? Quiet coyote, right? So the whole idea is you get the students to be interactive, so they'll settle down, quiet coyote. So I'm walking over to the group saying, quiet coyote, quiet coyote, quiet. And they're like turning their backs on me. And I think, oh, this is quite odd. So a little bit louder, quiet coyote, quiet coyote. And I look over in the corner, and there's Jesus. Now, I have to tell you, when I first met Jesus, he had on a name tag, and I thought it said Jesus. So I made the sign of the cross when I introduced myself. But Jesus finally came over to him, and he said, Senora, what are you doing? And I said, oh, well, this is something I thought they could use when they go into the schools, quiet coyote. He says, Senor, may I tell you about the cultural connection and the context with this? And I said, oh, of course. Now, please, I'm quoting here, so think of this as qualitative data. He said, Senora, when you do this, the billy goat in the field, he sees you, and he comes running towards you and f***s your wife. Let knowledge serve. Thank you so much.